Welcome back, everyone, to Real Estate Investing in New York with me, Christina Cremidas. And in this episode, we are getting naked. We are talking about getting naked in front of the co-op board. So stay tuned. We're covering everything here. This is Real Estate Investing in New York with Christina Cremidas, helping you achieve a future of financial success by making intelligent real estate investment decisions today. The co-op application process is one of the most intrusive processes you will ever have to go through as a human being on this planet. And I am saying this truly with great honesty. My clients tell me all the time that they feel like they're being stripped, that they literally feel like they're getting naked. They feel that it is extremely intrusive. And this is because the co-op application requires pretty much every piece of information that exists about you. The process is so dramatic that a lot of people say right from the beginning that they are not willing to look at co-ops. They are not something that they're going to consider. It doesn't matter how nice the co-op is. It is just not something that's going to work for them. And when they say this, I say, fine, because condos are so much easier to deal with. I'm happy to hear that you don't need to look at a co-op. But at the same time, there are certain people that a co-op is very good for. And that type of person is really two different character types. One situation that a co-op might work really well for is for someone who is simply looking for a primary residence and they want a lot of space. Most of these co-ops are larger than your typical condo would be at the same price point. In older buildings where rooms were a little bit more spread out and open, kitchens were a little bit more separate. So this type of style of home is something that is good for certain people. And if you have a limited budget, given the fact that co-ops tend to be more affordable than condos, and you really are looking for the square footage and for a long-term primary residence, then a co-op could be a good option for you. But you do need to be somebody who is totally fine following rules. And it's not just following rules, it's that you really need to be comfortable with the fact that there's going to be politics involved. There is a board that is going to approve or deny certain requests that you might have. And there is a strict list of building bylaws and house rules that you absolutely must follow. When you don't follow the rules of the co-op, there are significant fines that you as a resident will incur. So you really need to be someone that is not super of the mindset, like, I'm so independent, like, I don't want to have to submit a renovation request if I want to do something that I think is simple to my unit. Or I want to sell my apartment now and I want to sell it to a family member, even if the building doesn't think that that family member is a good addition for the building. You don't have complete autonomy when it comes to a co-op. But if you have a limited amount of money to spend and you want to just live somewhere for an extended period of time, then it could be a good option for you. The other type of person that a co-op works very well for is kind of on the other end of the spectrum, and this is your very wealthy person. And the reason for this is because a lot of these co-ops have an air of exclusivity to them. They are very difficult to buy in, and they often require more than a 20% down payment. Some buildings that are co-ops are cash-only buyers. Some require 50% down, 75% down. So the person that's buying in this building has millions of dollars in cash. So this is a totally different level. And these buildings are almost like social clubs. If you've gotten into this building, you are someone, right? You clearly have a lot of money and you had to go through a very strict vetting process where you were approved by the board. And they're very, very picky. So in this instance, If you're willing to kind of sacrifice your convenience and you're willing to go out of your way to get into this building, then it could work very well for you. And the reason why I say a very wealthy person is also because co-ops tend to take their sweet time when it comes to your application process and what they're going to do for you and when. So when I have people who are cutting it close in terms of we're buying this apartment and they gave notice to their previous lease, let's say, because they're going to be moving out and they're going to be moving into their new apartment, and the co-op board takes forever to get back to us on approval or to get back to us on whether they want to have you in for a board interview, my clients have like nowhere to live in the meantime. They're like, this is, most people that are earning an average salary or have a normal regular job do not have the free time or do not have the flexibility to live in a house in the Hamptons, for example, while after they've given up their other previous apartment to wait forever for a building to approve them. So this is the two types of people that I think are best fitting for the co-op experience. With that said, what exactly is required in order to be approved by a co-op? There is a very extensive application, and I'm going to be going into some of the things that you'll see in that application. And what's interesting to consider is that a lot of times my clients start out and they're fine with it. They're like, this is fine. It's not going to be an issue at all. Like, so what? I'll provide some bank statements. And everyone thinks that they can get out of this scot-free, that they're going to get in and out, that they're going to get their approval done, and that it's not going to be super invasive. Really, there is no way to hide anything from a co-op application. If you do try to hide things, they will be coming back to you with follow-up questions because they will find everything it is that you were hoping to not have to disclose. So the initial process is very detailed. Often I'm the one that's kind of pushing my clients to give the full picture, to give the whole story. Because as I go through the examples I'm going to be listing out for you, you will see that one thing kind of affects another, and you quickly snowball into having to provide everything about yourself. Firstly, the two most important things that a co-op building, and really any co-op building, is going to look at when it comes to an applicant is debt to income ratio and post-closing liquidity. These are two financial criteria that you absolutely must meet when applying for any co-op building. The debt to income ratio is the percentage of your monthly expenses and your monthly debts as compared to your full monthly income, your gross monthly income before taxes. So what you do here is you add up all of your monthly debts. Do you have any other outstanding mortgages? Do you have car auto loan payments? Do you have student loan payments? Do you have childcare payments? Anything that is a loan that is a recurring monthly payment gets counted for this debt portion of the ratio. When it comes to the income portion of the ratio, this would be all of your income before taxes. And if you are applying jointly with a partner or with someone else, you are going to combine your debts and combine your incomes for one overall debt to income ratio. Now, some people who are applying with someone else might find after looking at the other person's financials that it might not help them to apply together. Maybe someone has a lot of loans, which is going to show up as debt, and we have to find a way to get only a single aspect of this couple approved on their own instead of incorporating a new, more complicated addition to the application. So it's something to keep in mind that they are looking very thoroughly at both of the applicants that are on this application. Now, it's not just about getting the ratio of debt to income, it's what ratio is the goal here, right? What ratio is going to be accepted? The ratio, the percentage that the co-ops want to see when it comes to your debt divided by your income is really between 25 and 28%. This means that your expenses should not be more than really a quarter of your income. And that's a very difficult criteria to meet. If you're going to get approved by a bank just to get a simple mortgage, the bank will approve you with a debt to income ratio of up to 45% even, sometimes even higher, where your expenses can be almost 50% of your income. So the co-op requirement is extremely strict compared to what you're typically going to see when looking to get approved to purchase property in general. It's definitely something to take note of because a lot of times people realize, oh, I don't meet this criteria, so we have to only look at condos, for example. The other item that I mentioned of financial criteria that all buildings are looking at is called your post-closing liquidity. This is the amount of money that you have in cash, and it has to be liquid cash, given hence the term liquidity. It can't be a 401k. It can't be just an investment account that's kind of volatile with the stock market. It needs to be cash in bank accounts. And the co-op wants to see that you have at least 2 years of apartment carrying costs in cash after you close on the apartment. So after your down payment is put down and after your closing costs are paid, you still need to have 2 years of maintenance payments plus mortgage payments if you're taking out a mortgage in cash left over after you close in order to even be considered at getting accepted. Now, some co-ops are less strict. Some you can get away with a little bit less if everything else on the application is like immaculate. But really, most buildings are going to want to see at least 2 years or more. So how are they going to find out what your percentages are, right? Because it's not just an application where there's a blank space and it says put in your DTI or put in your post-closing liquidity. That's not how they're looking at it. You are submitting a full financial statement to the building as part of the application. You're listing all of the bank accounts that you have, you're listing all of their balances, and then you're providing the complementary bank statement, the corresponding bank statement, to prove that you actually have this dollar amount in that bank account. You're listing out all of the expenses, you're listing out all of your existing assets, and all of your existing liabilities on this financial statement. Now, what about if you're overqualified? I have a lot of clients that have a lot more money than they would need to purchase this one specific apartment, let's say. And they ask me, why would I need to show everything that I have going on or my entire full picture just to purchase an apartment that costs $1 million, let's say? I could show I have $1 million. Isn't that enough? Especially some people who are buying in cash. They're like, why do I need to go over above and beyond? The reason is because it's difficult to withhold any information at all. Usually, if you have that much money in the bank, your income is coming from a less conventional source, let's say. You're probably not going to the office every day and pulling in $10 million a year if you're not in an entrepreneurial situation or if you're not a business owner of some kind. So already your information is probably going to be a little bit more complicated. One of the documents that is always required in the co-op application is your tax returns. And that is going to show additional line items other than your basic income, where you're probably going to be showing other income or dividend income. And when co-ops see this, they usually like to also find out, where is that coming from? What is this other source of income? What are the accounts that are giving you this dividend income? So anything that is shown on the tax return needs to be quantified and substantiated by corresponding statements. So this is where we end up having to go digging, and the financial advisors have to provide us with all of your investment accounts now, for example, to show this dividend income. And you need to show your side hustle where you're showing other income, for example. And as this gets more and more complicated, every piece of new information that we find is a question of, how is a co-op board going to respond to this? What do you do on the side? Like, where is this other income coming from? And is it something that a board is going to like? Boards are allowed to discriminate. They can say no to any applicant for any reason, and they are not required to provide you with the reason why they are rejecting you. So it can be any reason at all. They could say no. And that's it. That's pretty much where the whole process ends. So the best bet is to be very forthright in the beginning. Make sure we have the story straight. Make sure it's a story that's good for you. And we do the absolute best that we can right from step one. Sometimes I have clients that are purchasing and using trust fund money in order to buy a co-op. Let's say there's a family trust and there's a newly graduated young professional that they want to buy an apartment for, and they're going to tap into their trust money to buy the apartment in their name. Sounds easy enough, but it's not as simple as it sounds. In order to show that you have the money for the purchase, you will have to show the trust fund. And a lot of times there's more money in that trust fund than my clients want to share. But this is why we call it getting naked, because you're going to be showing everything that you have. And if you've got billions of dollars, your building and your neighbors are going to know that. So it's really something that you want to make sure you're comfortable with when you choose to start looking at co-ops. It's not just a matter of, can I qualify? Do I have enough money to qualify? But am I willing to show everything that I have? The other thing to keep in mind when purchasing in a trust fund is, even though the cash might be there for the purchase, the person who's actually buying the apartment, whose name the apartment is going to be in, needs to qualify from a debt to income perspective in order to carry the monthly maintenance for the apartment. So it really doesn't matter how much cash you come in with. If the person doesn't have income that is going to cover the maintenance payments, you might still not get accepted. The person might say, well, my maintenance payments are going to be coming from the trust too. Like, I get a monthly or annual payout from this trust. Now you enter territory where the board might simply not like you because of that. They might be like, who does this privileged person think they are? Like, nice life for them. They have a trust fund that's completely supporting their entire lifestyle. But if it puts a bad taste in the board's mouth, or even just puts the bad taste in the mouth of one person on the board, you're going to encounter a lot of difficulty getting into this building. It's oftentimes that we see the wealthiest people have the hardest time with co-op board applications. You have to disclose all of your existing properties that you own. Now, if you have properties that you're trying to keep on the hush-hush that you don't want to talk about, why? Because is it going to show up as debt that you don't want to disclose? It's going to throw off your debt to income ratio. If so, it's going to be really hard to hide that, because you're going to be showing payments that you're making on your bank statements that the co-op is going to be analyzing. So you have to disclose these properties in advance. We have to provide the market value of your current property owned, and we have to disclose any outstanding mortgage payments that you're making, as well as any income that you're collecting on those properties. It's impossible to hide if you have mortgage payments that you're making, because a mortgage is going to show up on your credit report, and they are running your credit. So you have to proactively show all of these properties listed out, because the worst thing that can happen is the board comes back to you and asks for information, and we provide it later, which makes them feel like we were hiding something. It's kind of like dealing with your parents all over again when you used to get in trouble as a kid and they tell you, you should have just been honest from the beginning, because now the fact that you tried to hide something makes us not like you. So that's what we're trying to avoid here. And that's really the purpose of this episode, is to prep you for exactly what to expect when you get into this process. When it comes to existing mortgages or properties that are owned, you can account for your income if you are collecting rent from rental properties, but keep in mind that this is going to affect your aggregate debt to income ratio. So you definitely should hope that your mortgages and your expenses on these properties are not greater than the income that you're making on these properties, because if that's the case, it is going to negatively impact your combined debt to income ratio, and you might find yourself on the cusp of a rejection. A lot of people ask about crypto. Should I show my crypto statements? It really all comes down to are you gaining income from this crypto that's reflected on your tax returns? Is it a significant portion of your income? Because if it is, we're going to have to disclose it. And boards do not like crypto. Boards are very old fashioned, very old school. Imagine you're dealing with like grandparents, like the ones that are not a part of modern culture, right? Like the oldest school people you could think of is how co-ops operate. They do not understand crypto. They do not trust crypto. They do not think that having $1 million invested in crypto today is going to help you tomorrow. They don't understand how to cash out crypto to pay for this apartment. So it's not something that they want to see at all. Sources of income. This is a big one. If you are an entrepreneur or if you do anything that is not a straight up, simple, vanilla W-2, you're going to be in for it when it comes to applying for a co-op. If your income was volatile year over year, you're going to encounter issues when applying for a co-op. They will require you to prove your income, and that is shown by showing your tax returns. And if your income fluctuates year over year, the board is going to use the average of your most recent 2 tax returns. So this is how they're going to calculate your average income. Who does this matter most to? Someone that had a good year and a bad year, and we don't really know exactly where to find that average. Like, how are we to predict what your income is going to look like this year? Or a new business that's doing phenomenally well, but doesn't have a long track record, because co-ops do not like any element of risk. So you really need to show that you have a solid, well-oiled machine business, if it is your own business, that has been operating for years, in order for a co-op to feel comfortable approving you if this business that you own is your main source of income. If you receive bonus income, even if you are a vanilla W-2 straightforward employee, if you receive a bonus, it's very on the fence as to whether the building is going to count your bonus in your debt to income equation. The way to know if a co-op is going to count your bonus income and whether you can use that when it comes to budgeting, how much are you going to be able to spend on a co-op, you need to think about how many years history do you have of this bonus? Do you have at least 2 years of bonus history? If so, you can use that and assume that the co-op will allow you to count that towards your income. If your bonus was high one year and low another year, for example, it's going to be similar to the way they look at income, and they will only use your most 2 recent years of bonus history, and they will take the average of the 2 in order to project what the current year's bonus will likely look like. It is difficult when it comes to getting an employment letter from your employer, let's say, because most of the time bonuses are not guaranteed and your company will not write the exact dollar amount that your bonus is going to be for you this year. So it's very difficult to prove, and it requires you to have a steady history of bonus in order for it to be usable. If you are getting a gift to purchase this apartment, there's 2 things that can happen here. It could be accepted, or the board can be a board that says, no, gifts are not allowed in this building. So that's really just a 50-50 thing. And your real estate broker should be showing you only buildings from the beginning, only buildings that are going to allow gifts if that's your situation. If you are getting a gift by the apartment, again, back to what we were talking about when it comes to trust funds, you still will have to show that you are qualified to maintain the apartment. So if you're getting a gift to buy, you still will have to show that you have sufficient income with a 25 to 28% debt to income ratio, accounting for the monthly maintenance as part of your expenses. And they will still approve you personally as far as are you a good purchaser for this building? So even if you have a beautiful large gift that's in excess of what you need to buy the place, you still are going to have to be approved by on an income basis. Guarantors. If you are getting a gift to purchase, or if your parents are helping you buy a property, or if you're tapping into a trust fund, for example, to buy, and it's not your sole income that is getting you the approval from an income perspective for this purchase, you are going to have to use a guarantor. That is kind of like your light at the end of the tunnel if you're a complicated applicant, or not even complicated, but if you're not vanilla enough to be a shoo-in approval. We do always recommend adding a guarantor to your application. A guarantor should be someone straightforward. Please let it just be a W-2 employee that has a very straightforward tax return, that is not convoluted, that will be a slam dunk when it comes to the building feeling comfortable with this person. The guarantor will have to do an application exactly like yours. They will have to do everything that you're doing. Sometimes they request them to be present at the board interview as well. So this guarantor needs to be comfortable with the fact that their credit is going to be checked, their background check is going to also be conducted, they're going to be able to show good credit, they're going to have to show solid income, and they're going to have to provide all of the documentation and go through the entire rigmarole that you are going through in order to get approved here. And I realized that that was the first time I mentioned background checks. Background checks is also a thing in addition to credit checks that the building is doing. So if you have anything in your history at all, you need to be cognizant of it and just bring it up to your buyer's agent beforehand so your buyer's agent can help you through it. We just recently had an example of a purchaser that we found out later after the fact, after they ran her credit, that she had stuff come up in her report that we were not aware of. If we were aware of it beforehand, we would have addressed it, we would have been honest, and we would have submitted the right explanation and relevant updates to the board that would have made this person be approved from day one. But when you have to retroactively go back and explain yourself later, again, back to the whole, you were trying to hide this, we don't trust you as a person. Keep in mind that a co-op, you're buying into a corporation. This isn't just a real estate asset, it's a corporation. And when you purchase a co-op, you're buying shares of a corporation. So imagine you had your own business or your own corporation. It's going to be very important to you who you're going into business with, right? You're not just going to pick a stranger off the street and say, hey, do you want to be my business partner? So when a co-op is reviewing you, they're reviewing you from the perspective of, is this someone that we'd like to make our partner? This person has to maintain this building with us. They have to be agreeable. They have to be on the same page. And this is what the most important takeaway is when it comes to disclosing things in advance. Just because you had a mistake in your past does not mean that you're going to be rejected. It shouldn't be a secret unless you're like a murderer. In that case, just please don't even have us work for you. But that kind of thing is that, you know, if it wasn't a major offense, you're going to be fine. We just have to address it from the beginning. Just know that there's no secrets. Again, you're getting naked. Your background check is going to be run. Your credit's going to be run. There are no secrets here. So let's just get ahead of it. If the application is online, which many applications are nowadays, in fact, most of the applications are done online nowadays, you might think, great, okay, that makes it easier because we're not dealing with a gigantic, ridiculous, printed out PDF document, right? But on the other hand, a lot of people are concerned about their security, right? You're uploading social security numbers, bank statements, tax returns to an online portal. I have a lot of clients that get concerned about this. I have clients that are in cybersecurity that are like, this is super uncomfortable for me. I also have old clients that don't understand how to get into the system, don't feel comfortable accessing it, and we have to work through it with them too. We very often will reach out to the management company and we will say, is there any other way that we can get this done? Is there any exception that you're willing to make? We always try for you if it's something that you're uncomfortable with, but you do need to understand that the probability that we're going to get the building to alter their process for this application for us is very slim. And usually you just end up having to go ahead with the online portal. And we're very helpful if you're working with us as your buyer's agent or if you're working with me as your buyer's agent. You're not going to need to feel like you have such a heavy lift, but you do need to get comfortable with that idea that your stuff is going to be getting uploaded into a portal It's a secure portal, but still, nothing's bulletproof completely. And it is something that you'll need to be comfortable with. The type of mortgage that you're getting. There are a lot of mortgage products available that are different than your standard conventional 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Unfortunately, the only mortgage products co-ops like to see are your standard conventional 30-year fixed rate mortgages. If you have anything different than that, you're going to have an issue with the board. Of course, we can explain anything. We could do our best for the approval, but you do need to know going into it that this is going to be a challenge. If you have an adjustable rate mortgage, here's what happens. With an adjustable rate mortgage, you get a better interest rate than you would with a 30-year fixed, but after 5 years or 7 years or 10 years, that great interest rate is going to expire. And the rate jumps up to market rate, right? So if the rates are lower on the day that you expire, good, you're golden, right? But there's no way to predict that because there's a great chance that the rates will be higher when your rate expires. And there is a maximum rate that your adjustable rate loan could cap out at. Every adjustable rate loan has a maximum rate upon expiration that loan could jump to. So you could go from having a 4% interest rate to, upon expiration, maxing out at a 10% interest rate. So, and I'm not a loan officer, so if that number was a little bit messed up, just bear with me. But that's an example of the difference that you could pay in interest upon the expiration of that loan. When it expires, you have to refinance, and there's a long process there's a process associated with that. So when a board looks at your application and they see that you're using an adjustable rate mortgage, what they do is they actually take the maximum rate that loan will jump to upon its expiration, and they will use that interest rate when it comes to calculating your monthly payment for this property, and that is what goes into your debt to income ratio. More often than not, that's what I see happening. Now, if you're getting an adjustable rate mortgage, you probably are already conscious of your monthlies and you are working to reduce them in order to reach this debt to income goal to get into the building. So this is going to completely work against you because now you have a very dramatically higher new interest rate that they're looking at when it comes to this application and the approval. So it's going to require a ton of explanation. I've had boards come back and ask for us to change our loan product, actually, to put it simply. So just know that. The other types of loans that you can get are like physicians loans, there are FHA loans, there are veterans loans. All of these loans have a phenomenal perk, and it's that you get to put down next to nothing for your down payment. You could put down 5%, you could put down 3%, you can put down any low number that's less than the co-op requirement, which is usually a minimum of 20% down. Just because you have this loan, just because you got approval for this loan from your bank, does not mean the board is going to take you. The board is still going to say, okay, great, that's good for you that you got this loan, but we only accept 20 or 30 or 40% down payment. So since that's not what you have, you cannot be here. And that's the way it shakes out. So if you're looking at FHA loans, which are completely doable in some condo buildings, work with an agent that knows the buildings, that can do the right investigative work for you before you get too down the rabbit hole on any one particular building just to find out that it won't work, and go about it from a condo perspective for sure. And, take it one step at a time with your broker, but just know that it's not good for a co-op at all. If you're looking to purchase in the name of an LLC, if you are someone who wants to purchase in a business name for any reason, let's say you're using your business income to qualify and you want the apartment listed under your business name, or if you create an LLC just for the purposes of placing this particular asset in order to protect it from being tapped into if someone was to, let's say, sue you personally, for example, which is a big reason why people like to purchase in the name of an LLC, or if it's just for tax purposes, whatever your reason is, if you are interested in purchasing in the name of a business, the co-op is going to require extra review of the business that it's being purchased in. If it's a brand new LLC that you just made for the sake of using the name, It's probably going to be fine in terms of an approval standpoint, but just know that they are going to want to review your LLC documents very closely. They will often use outside counsel, attorneys, to review these documents. This will be at an additional fee to you. And there will be extra documents that are needed to draft up for the transaction prior to your closing, like an occupancy agreement where even though the purchaser's name is a business, you are listed as the occupant. So there's, of course, additional documents and paperwork needed for that. And there's also a guarantee agreement that will be required where you have to personally, even though you're buying in the name of a business, you will need to personally guarantee the apartment. Because even if the purchaser is a business or is a dummy LLC that was just created for the name, you still need a human being to personally be responsible for the payments to the building. So these are all, of course, additional documents that come at an extra fee to you for the co-op's attorney to draft up for us. Just something to know. Reference letters, employment letters. These are taken very seriously. Oftentimes with co-op applications, you need several. You'll need a letter from your employer proving active employment at the company. They'll want it to reflect your salary, your job title, and the length of time that you've been employed at this company. And they will call the employer to verify your active employment. So you cannot lie about this. And they also will ask for several reference letters. Usually they're going to ask for a few personal reference letters, which will be friends of yours. And then they will ask for professional reference letters, which will be people who you've worked with, that you will need to ask for letters from. Again, I have a lot of clients that, let's say everything else checks out. They're like a slam dunk applicant. They're very private people. They're like, I don't want to tell my friends and family that I'm buying this apartment. Like, I don't want this. I don't want my employer to know. Like, it doesn't matter. It's a tough thing sometimes to get around, but you have to come up with a few people that you're willing to tell that you're doing this, and you're going to need to have them provide a letter for you that will tout your praises and make you look like a great person. Obviously, you probably already are, but you're going to need to have several people provide their personal accounts on your behalf in the form of a letter. And it is also not rare that a building will reach out to your referrals and just confirm that what you're saying is true. During your interview, a common question is, what do you like to do in your free time? And this is kind of a tricky question because, again, keeping in mind that a board can reject you for literally any reason, some people on boards can be very judgmental, and you want to be careful about what you're saying your hobbies are. I know that Holly Parker, a very well-respected agent in the industry, wrote in her book about how she had clients that said that they enjoy taking trips to Atlantic City. They like the environment and they like gambling or whatever it was. And they got rejected for saying that. So, I mean, in hindsight, I guess you could say, well, you said you enjoy it. Like, but still, it's innocent, right? Like, there are plenty of great people that enjoy going there. And should it be grounds for a rejection? No, but it is. It very well can be. I had clients that wanted to volunteer that they enjoyed music festivals and going to Burning Man, for example. I was like, you're not saying that. Like, and it's difficult. It's just difficult for me as an agent to have to tell my clients sometimes that their very well-intentioned hobby is not seen always in a positive light. It's not easy feedback to deliver, but look, it's like, you got to keep your eyes on the prize here. It's like a job interview. There are certain things that you just don't need to bring up. And those are the things that we will, help you tailor for the sake of the application and for the sake of the approval. Obviously, we're always being honest. We're never lying. This is a business transaction. So that was a lot to digest. I think that was a lot of information. We didn't even really go into every single little detail about the application, but I don't want to bore you. I think this was a lot for an episode. I'll start closing out by giving you a couple of personal anecdotes of things that I've seen boards push back on and what we did to get around them. Remember how I mentioned that boards are like dealing with people from a previous generation, like very old school, sometimes it really is that bad. I've had boards push back. I feel like you're going to be livid when I tell you this, but single income households, which are like totally normal, right? One person's working, one person's not. But if the applicant that is earning the income is a woman, I have had boards push back on that. They're like, why is this the husband a freeloader? Like, we've literally heard this. And we're like, are you kidding me? Like, it gets me actually really annoyed when I talk about it, but there's a lot of things about this business that exist that you just have to kind of like roll with the punches. But they are allowed to do that. Like, can you believe it? But we pushed back and we were able to substantiate and show that her income was solid. And they actually went as far as saying, what happens if she loses her job? Like, they had a small child at home. So they're like, the board's like, what if she loses her job? Like, what is she supposed to do? Like, as if she's like a damsel in distress. Any single income household, if someone loses their job, is going to need to figure it out, right? But since she was a mother, it was like she was going to be this helpless, desperate character. And we like literally it was one of the more frustrating things that we've had to deal with just from a fundamental ethics perspective, but we got through it and we got the clients approved. We did have to agree to literally pay the board in advance for a few years of maintenance payments that they held until they decided that they were comfortable and confident in the applicants, and they ended up like refunding it to them after a few years. But it was pretty horrific. Like, that's something that it can be very upsetting, and it can make an applicant even not know if they want to live in this building, knowing that the board is this old-fashioned. But at that point, you're on the hook to proceed. You can't just change your mind after you're contractually in an agreement to purchase and you just don't like something the board said. So, you know, it's about having a tough skin and working with your broker to make sure that we're putting you in the best light possible to get through it. And just, again, eyes on the prize. You want to be in this beautiful home that you fell in love with, and this is the way we need to get there. I've had co-ops push back on bonus income, which reasonable enough, but I've had boards push back on bonus income for attorneys. I had a couple that I worked with recently, husband and wife. They were both attorneys. Several years in, they were well employed, great consistent income. And attorneys, the law industry, is in a lockstep payment system, which essentially means that all of the big firms in the law industry pay out the exact same dollar amount. Like, you can Google attorney salaries at any of the top law firms, and you're going to see their entire payment schedule. You'll see exactly what they're making in base and exactly what they're making in bonus, and it is down to the penny exact no matter what company you're looking at. And that schedule there's nothing more accurate than that. So if an attorney is collecting a bonus, this is the most guaranteed bonus that one can have. So what happened in this scenario with this particular co-op was that they pushed back on my client's bonus income. And my clients were just really annoyed because it showed that the board was very uneducated on what goes on. And it only would have taken a simple Google search in order to realize that they should absolutely be counting their bonus income. And for an attorney, their bonus income is substantial. It's a substantial percentage of their overall annual income. So if the board wasn't going to accept this, they were not going to qualify, and our entire application was going to be rejected. So the broker and the person that I had working for me to prepare the board package did an entire new supplemental report, essentially outlining the lockstep nature of the business. We included the entire chart where we showed what their salary was going to be every single upcoming year. And we wrote it out in a way that was extremely simple and straightforward. And ultimately, we got them accepted too. So, again, it goes back to we can get everything done usually, but it's going to just be a lot of effort. And finally, the last thing to make note of is that Pets are usually a big question mark when it comes to co-op buildings. Certain buildings allow pets, certain buildings don't. Now, that's the easy part. You're not going to be if you have a pet, you're not going to be looking at buildings that don't allow them. Okay, that's easy enough. The complicated part is, what if you have a service animal? Because service animals are legally allowed everywhere. You are not allowed to be turned away because you need a service animal. In co-op buildings, though, again, it goes back to the fact that they're allowed to discriminate. They can say no to any application for any reason. And oftentimes, when we disclose that there is a service animal present in a building that is no pets, depending on how politically correct the building is, they may actually admit that they don't care that it's a service animal and that it's still rejected, which they could get in big trouble for. But are you really going to court with the co-op? Like, who's your attorney and who are you paying to do that? Most people just suck it up and waste a ton of time getting to this final point just to hear that it's a no. A lot of times the buildings will simply reject the application and they'll give you some other not ridiculous, but they'll give you just some other random reason, and you kind of have a feeling that it was because of the service animal, because they don't want the pets in the building, and there's really not much that you could do about it unless you want to pay an attorney to litigate against them. And it's a lot of time from you and money, and it's easier to just cut your losses. So these are some of the things that we've seen happen, and I thought that they'd be good to put on your radar. Again, we got naked. I literally feel violated. I'm sure you do too. Getting into the process, you just have to get ready for it. And thick skin, just get it done. It's a business transaction. Do what we need to do, get to the goal. Or you can do my personal favorite thing, which is to look at condos. Let's buy a condo, guys. So anyway, I hope you found this helpful. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please share it with a friend who you think would benefit from hearing this information. If you're watching on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to the channel so that you can be notified when we post new episodes. And as always, thank you guys for being here, and stay tuned for the next one.